Okay, I have 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and start this February 18th meeting. Um, Glad people can make it. I know Tuesday was really rough for everybody, with it being in the negative temperatures. Made it difficult. We were being threatened with the whole rolling blackout thing. Today it's in the 20s, so it's great, So our next meeting will be March 16th, as you can see right here. And that will be featuring, I believe, Shannon Smith will be our featured speaker that month. Our class schedule, Microsoft Teams instructor-led classes. We have one next week, a Geopack Road 1. It's a 4-day class or so. 12 are registered. And again, if you have anybody that needs a refresher or somebody new needs to take this, now be the time to jump in on that Road 1 and get them updated on that. It's not too bad with Teams. We can add as many as we need to. So if you got anybody in your district needs a refresher or needs the class, get a hold of me. Just send me an email or get them to sign up a Mo.U and I'll check it and get the folders all created out there in ProjectWise so that we'll be able to have class on Monday. Road 2, we have on March 22nd through the 26th. We have 6 signed up for that one. So that one, we got a little bit of time out, a month before we'll have that one. And then we have an intro to Bentley drainage coming up in April 6th and 7th. And we already have 10 registered for that one. So again, what you do is just go out to Mo.U and register for those classes. And we still have all the online classes that are available. Concept Station, Intro to MoDOT Hydrology and Hydraulics, Power Geopack, Microstation Fundamentals, Power Geopack Road 1, and soon there will be a Power Geopack Road 2 out there. We got all the files and videos done for that one, so I don't know how soon, but it'll be out there when we get the opportunity to get it out there. Okay, so that pretty much covers most of the class stuff, what we got going on. We don't have any big updates from Bentley. I'm sitting on a meeting after this to talk about the plan sheet stuff and Open Roads Designer, some other stuff that's going along. But for the most part, we don't have any big updates with that. So that brings us to Chad Green, who's going to give us a CAD Detailing Standards. He's going to cover some of that. And he's going to talk about more with the name boundary tool for covering other sheets that we have out there. So see if Chad can speak.
Can you hear me?
I hear you, Chad. I'm going to stop sharing and we'll make you the presenter. And where are you at, Chad? You should now be presenting or able to present.
All right, let me share the content. Screen 1. See that okay?
I can see it.
Awesome. And like Bill said, all I'm going to be talking about today is the CAD detailing standards, kind of how it's set up in ORD. And we will also talk about a couple things that we've added that sometimes it's kind of hard to find some stuff in the ribbons up at the top. So we added a kind of a pull down that will be helpful for you guys to use at the very beginning if you can't find certain tools. And then after that, we'll talk about the name boundary tool on those other types of sheets that get created for your plan sheets, like, your typical sections, your title sheet, your quantity, and stuff like that. And then after we get done with that, if you guys have any questions over stuff, we can go over those questions. So the first thing that we have up at top here, we have our workflows. And for the CAD detailing standards, we have a workflow that's called MoDOT CAD Detailing Standards. And if you've used some of the tasks in Power Geopack SS4 or SS10, it's going to be very similar to how it's set up underneath there. Instead of it being on the left side, it's just going to be a ribbon up here at the top. So if you look at the top here, you have 3 different tabs, or actually 3 different ribbons, and that's what they call it. You have the bridge ribbon, and you have design, and then you have survey. So depending on which division that you are in, you would go to that particular tab for doing your final detailing for your sheets. Okay. And like I said, this is all set up very similar to what it is on the task in SS4 or SS10 that you're using right now. So like for example, the design, these are all set up here at the top. It's all categorized as the like the title sheet all the way down to cross sections. So if you're working on like your typical sections, of course you'd go to that particular tab there or icon. And then underneath there, it's all broken out similar to what it is before, where you have notes, lines, or miscellaneous symbols, and you can select whichever item it is, and it will, of course, either place that cell or allow you to place that note or that text or that dimensioning or whichever item that you select. So with that, there's nothing really too much else to really talk about that. It's just our CAD standards are going to be set up underneath this workflow right here that says MoDOT CAD Detailing Standards. And then you'd go to that particular ribbon up here at the top, depending on what division that you're in. And then you'd go to that particular section and add your details as needed. So that's pretty much it with that. Like I said, if anybody has any questions on that, let me know. But it should be pretty well self-explanatory on how to set it up. Now, one thing that we did add in the interface here, up here at the top, we have some stuff that we can add or subtract to it. But by default, we added one underneath there that says MoDOT Miscellaneous. And the reason why we added that, at least for the initial beginning, whenever we roll it out, and we'll probably keep it there for a while, there's certain tools inside of your workflows that are sometimes hard to find or hard to get to. Okay. And I think this was demonstrated in previous videos, but at the very beginning, you may not know where certain tools are at. If you go to Open Roads Drawing Production, or if you're going to Open Roads Modeling, it's going to load up those particular ribbons up here at the top. But if you don't know where a certain tool is located at, you can always do a search up here and it will navigate and get you to that particular tool. But if you don't know exactly how that tool is worded in ORD, it may be kind of difficult to find that existing tool that you may have used. So whenever we roll it out, we will have this little tab up here at the top, or this little pull down that says MoDOT Miscellaneous. And if you click on that little down arrow, you'll kind of have the same tools of what you had before in SS4 or SS10. Okay, so you can go down through here, and maybe sometimes it's kind of hard to find the geographic tools in ORD, where you can navigate down through here, select that particular group, and then you can get to one of those tools accordingly. Okay, so we have added that. Like I said, that may or may not stay for the longevity of it, but it will be there at the very beginning to kind of help everybody, transition from, the icons like what you had before with your toolbars to the ribbons up here at the top. Also underneath here, at least for right now, we're going to have this miscellaneous apps underneath the MoDOT Miscellaneous. And this is where you could get to those other apps not included in ORD, like our Excel to Open Roads Designer. We got that working after some persuasion with Bentley to get it, fixed. But we got that working in ORD. It's working exactly the same as what it did in SS4 or SS10. And then also you have the options to load auto turn if you have auto turn installed on your PC or laptop, and then the same thing with the Taurus software. So you can easily get to those apps if you need to work with that on top of your Open Roads Designer application. So with that, does anybody have any questions so far on those two particular topics?
Hey, Chad.
Yes.
Who would they contact for AutoTurn if they need to get that installed?
It could be anybody at CAD support, but the ones that normally install it are Chris Schwantner or myself, and also I think Shannon Smith has installed it also. So either one of us three would be can give us a call and we can install AutoTurn. And the easiest way to figure out if you don't have AutoTurn installed, at the very beginning, whenever you try to use AutoTurn, which is actually in SS4 right now, there's an option underneath one of the pull downs. But if it doesn't want to load up for you, more than likely down here at the bottom, it'll say unknown application or something like that. That just means you don't have it installed. So either one of us three will be able to install it.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay. I accidentally muted myself, so my bad. All right. All right, the next thing that I'm going to discuss, since no one had any questions over that, which, like I said, that's pretty well self-explanatory. The next topic that we're going to talk about is the name boundary tool, but with those other sheets, like for typical sections or title sheets or quantity sheets or any special sheets that you're creating. So if we go up to the Open Roads modeling workflow, we can either get to that particular workflow or you can go to some other workflows as long as you see this drawing production ribbon up here at the top. And you're going to notice that as you go down through some of these other ones, like the Open Roads drawing production, you'll see that drawing production inside of there. Same thing if you just go to the drawing, which would be kind of like your standard MicroStation drawing tools. I think that one there is in a different location on this one. Actually, it's underneath view for the name boundary. Another one would be like the drainage and utilities. You have the drawing production underneath there. So you have different spots of where you can get to the particular name boundary tool. And I'll just keep it underneath here for right now, and that's perfectly fine. But if I go to the name boundary tool and I go to place name boundary, you have your different options up here at the top. And in the previous meeting, Bill went over the civil plan and he's talked about the cross sections and then also, the profile. But if we want to use the name boundary tool on those other types of sheets, we have to use a different option up here at the top. So up here at the top right here, there's an option that says from drawing boundary. And whenever you click on that, it gives you these options here, which is a little bit more a watered down version from like your plan where you have all these options. You don't have that many options underneath from drawing boundary because you really don't need those. So first of all, depending on which division that you are in, you would select one of these right here. Whether you're in bridge, you'd use this one, or if you're in design, you'd use this one right here to place your name boundary. The next thing that you have is the name. Of course, what do you want the name of your boundary to be? And you can name it however you want. I'm just going to name this one typical section 1. If I can type right. Jeez, can't type today. Typical section -1. For my description, that's optional. You can put a description in there if you want. And of course, your detail scale will be the size of what your border is going to be, whether it's a 10 scale or if it's a 40 scale or if it's a 5 scale, depending on which one that you want. And for this example here, we're just going to place a 5 scale sheet since I have some geometry that's already out there. And there's different ways you can do this. You could place your name boundaries of whatever scale that you want and then draw in your geometry, or like what I have here, I already have some geometry that's out there and I'm just going to place some name boundaries and then just drag that information into that particular border. So there's kind of different ways you can do it depending on which option that you need. So I'll use this detail scale of 1 inch equals 5 foot for my border. You do have a couple different options down here at the bottom where you can place a single name boundary, which that's what we'll do right now. You can also do a rectangular array where you can do multiple ones. We could go over that, but that's pretty well self-explanatory on that. If you click on it, you got some different options of, your overlap. If you want an overlap for those, you could put in a negative value to where it expands it out a little bit farther. Same thing for your rows and columns. And we probably will have some sheets already set up that will have the name boundaries inside of there for like your, let's say your quantity sheets. Your quantity sheets normally with that in SS10 right now, you have 12 different borders inside of that particular seed file. Well, we'll probably have we will probably already have a seed file created that will have 12 name boundaries inside of there. So you wouldn't have to necessarily do this particular process for that particular type of sheet. But if you have an application where you need to use the multiple, the multiple ones right here for the rectangular array, you can do that. And then also you have one that you can place an array around a particular path. All right, so we'll just do the single one. And then the last one right here is the group. If you actually want to group these named boundaries into a separate group, you can do that. And that would be like a good instance for this would be like for your typical sections. Let's say you had, 4 typical sections for a particular route. And then you had another 4 or 5, sheets that you want to create for a different route. Well, you can actually group those into different groups. And you'll kind of see that here in a second. So I'll just name this one here. I'll just do a new group, and I will name the group Route 54. And then, of course, the description is optional. I'm going to leave this box right here unchecked for the create drawing, and I'll come back to that in a different fashion. So if I'm ready to place the border, all I would need to do is come out here, click to place it, and we'll see how fast this goes. My network connection is not the greatest right now. And you'll see that it placed that named boundary. So I could come back in here and I could do the same thing for the next one. Now, since I actually created a group for that, you'll notice that my typical section, my name for it's going to be typical section 2 for the actual named boundary, but my group, it actually jumped from Route 54 to Route 55. So it's going to try to create another group to place this particular named boundary. If I want to do that, I could, or I could come back in here and actually select that Route 54 group. That way, all of these named boundaries will be underneath that particular one group. And like I said, you'll see that here in just a second. And I'm just going to dynamically place these out here. You can always come out here and use your AccuDraw to get them exactly the way you want it. But I'm just going to dynamically place it just to kind of show how the tool works. So I'll place this one. And the group here is still set to Route 54. And this is typical C. And I'll do one more for number 4. Okay. So if I have my name boundaries placed out there, I could draw inside of there, do my detailing or whatever. For this example here, I already have some typical sections that I stole from another district. So if I want to place those particular details inside of that boundary, I can just use my element selection tool and I'll just drag those particular details inside of there. Or what I could have done is whenever I was doing my name boundaries, I could have just placed that border, around that geometry. And that would have been fine also. So like I said, there's different ways you can do it.
Hey, Chad, this is Steve.
Yes, yes.
When you place your name boundaries, can you move them later on if need to? Can you move those boundaries around also or not? Once you get them placed?
You can, but let's say there's a couple different ways you can do it. If you have the name boundary placed and you've cut your sheets from the name boundary tool, then it doesn't like it too much. But, sorry about that, that was my phone. Let me come back to here in just a second there. So like I said, if you have the name boundaries placed and you've already cut your sheets, but then you go back over and you move one of these name boundaries, it's not going to look correct on your actual sheet model that you create. But what you can do is you can go back in and delete your sheet model and drawing model that is created, which we're going to show here in a little bit, and recreate those two, and it would repopulate and redo that sheet properly. So yes, you can do it, but you have to realize that once this name boundary has been placed and you've cut your sheets, it won't automatically update it. Does that kind of make sense, Steve?
Yes.
Okay. It's a good question. I wish it would be dynamic, but right now it's not, and I don't think it will be as far as I know. And Bill maybe get some more information about that today in that meeting that they're going to have. They had a meeting yesterday on a different tool, which I'm on a council for that, for like the place civil label, and they're having a council for that on the name, or on the name boundary tools of getting certain functionality corrected and fixed. So, okay, good question. So once these name boundaries are placed, and of course I got my annotation scale to what it needs to be, which is 1 to 5. Of course, if I bump it up to 1 to 50, you know, it's not going to look correct, depending on which scale that you have it set to. And these are all annotative driven like it should be. So now if I'm ready to actually create these, I can come in here and go to my name boundary tool and click on this little button right here. Let me drag that back over. Now, before I go too much more into depth here, there is a methodology of how Bentley has this name boundary tool created. And I think Bill may have explained this, but I will go ahead and explain it in this video also. Is the name boundary tool, how Bentley has it set up is in the default model, which that's what we're in right now. Let me go back to the home tab and I go to the models there. You're going to notice that we're in the default model. And the way Bentley has it set up is they have it set to where this is where you put in all of your plan graphics. So for like your, you know, your survey data, your utilities, your plan graphics that you're creating for your center line of the road, your edge of pavement, edge of shoulder, and stuff like that. That's the geometry that normally would get placed in the default model. And then in the drawing model, which will get created here in a little bit, that's where you'd add in those other details that you would need for that particular sheet. So for like your notes and your text and dimensioning, you know, your annotations that go with that particular sheet that necessarily doesn't need to be placed on the default model, that's where that geometry would get placed. And then the byproduct of those two items, or those two models, which would be the default and the drawing, it'll actually get put into a sheet model. And in the sheet model, you really don't have to do anything inside of there. Actually, nothing should get done inside of your sheet model because everything will be contained in either the default model or the sheet model. The only thing that you need to add to the sheet model is the title block information on the right side, and that would be it. Okay. That would be a typical for doing like your plan sheets or your profile sheets and stuff like that. Now for this example here, you could do it a couple different ways, you know, for those other types of sheets that you're doing. You know, what I would probably suggest, and this all depends on what type of sheet that you're creating, you know, if you're doing other sheets like your typical sections or your quantities or whatever, you could just put everything in the default model and it will still create the sheet model and the drawing model, but you wouldn't necessarily have to do anything in the drawing model. You know, everything will be inside of this default area right here. And that only goes for, like I said, these other types of sheets that you're creating. Okay. All right. If I go back to my name boundary dialog here, before, and Bill kind of showed this, we had the plan groups or your profile groups or your cross-section groups. Well, there is a group right here for other groups, and that's for this drawing boundary that we're doing. So if I click on that down arrow, you see that we had the group set to Route 54. So, you know, if you had separate groups underneath there for, you know, different roadways or side roads or whatever, you know, you could break those out into separate groups. And then underneath there, you're going to see the named boundaries that you've created, which would be 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. So now I'm ready to actually produce these into a drawing model and a sheet model. I'll come in here and click on this little button right here that says create drawing, or show the create drawing dialog. And then I will go ahead and right click over this group here and I can do the create drawing. And inside of here, you go ahead and give it a name for each one of those. And I'll just leave this set to this right here. You don't need to change any of this. You do need to change this right here, which that's pretty simple. You just change it to whatever your annotation scale is. We'll make sure our detail scale is still set to the 1 inch equals 5. And then now if we're ready to produce these into a drawing model and a sheet model for each one of those named boundaries, we can do that. Now, using this particular option here, which this is what they call a microstation tool and not a civil tool, there are some limitations with that right now. And in the create drawing tool, using the plan option, Bill kind of showed where you can actually output those into separate sheets. Okay. Well, using this option right here, that functionality has not been included inside of here. So all of your your drawing models and your sheet models would be contained inside of this particular file. And there's good points with that and there's bad points with that, but that's just one limitation that is set up with this particular option, at least as of right now. So if I'm ready to produce these into sheets and drawing models, I can go ahead and click on OK. And we'll see how long this takes. And you'll see here that it created this sheet model. Okay. So if I go back into my models here, you're going to notice that I have my default model. And then if I go to sheet number 1 or drawing number 1, you have the drawing model. And you could add stuff inside of here if you needed to or whatnot. Or you can go back to the default model for this. You got your right here, or sheet model number 2, number 3, and so forth. Okay. Now, one thing that you will notice, and I have not been able to figure this out because it just does it sporadically. Sometimes it'll do it, sometimes it won't. As you see here on sheet number 2, it looks fine. I mean, everything, the boundary looks exactly the way it should. It fits inside of there. But if you noticed on sheet number 1 or sheet number 3 or sheet number 4 here, you see that the boundary has been shifted just a little bit. And like I said, I don't know exactly why it does it on certain times, but it does do that. And like I said, I'm still trying to figure out why, but it is an easy fix to get that shifted. So at least as of right now, if I want to fix that to where my boundary actually fits, inside of my actual sheet border here, I can just come up to my references, to my attached tools, and go to references. And inside of here, you're going to have the border, and then you're going to have your other reference file right here, which is actually your drawing model. Well, I can come in here and just simply move it by grabbing the upper right corner of it right there, and then snap it to that border right there, and then I'm good to go. Just like that. So that may be one thing that you may have to fix, depending on what type of sheet it is. Hopefully I can try to figure out why it's shifting it on certain spots, but I have not been able to figure out a reason why it would do it one time, but then not do it another. Okay. So,
Chad, which
yes.
line represents the name boundary border or line that you see in the other file? Is that dash line that
This
you
dash,
see on this?
this dash line right here?
Yeah, is that the name boundary kind of border or whatever?
No, this is the actual named boundary right here.
Okay, so the name boundary is actually, the name boundary area is actually bigger than what we would consider like the drawing area, correct?
No, well, the named boundary is this area right through here. As I move my mouse around,
I
it's going
see
from,
the highlighted bluish line there.
it's not this one. It's
Okay.
it's this one right here. This is the named boundary area right through
Okay.
right through there.
Okay.
So basically anything that fits inside of that area right through there, that's what's going to be fit inside of there. Does that make sense? It does not include the actual border area right through here, that's ignored.
Yeah, I was just wondering,
So
where that shows up on the plan sheet.
what do you mean on the plan sheet?
I was wondering just to see what the size of it was, because like if you weren't, just so that when you're trying to place your boundaries or where you plan on trying to place your, like maybe you're trying to place your typicals in a certain spot on your plan sheet, you can see, in the name boundary, that's where it's going to show up in.
Yeah, so if I go back to this one here, which I'm in sheet number 1, which this one right here is sheet 1 right here. This boundary right here is just basically the working area of your border. Because what it's doing is, it's placing, in reality, what it's doing is you're placing the name boundary of whatever size that you want, whether it's a 5 scale or 20 scale, and it takes that boundary and it basically fits it to that border in the sheet model. So it acts a little bit different than what you're accustomed to right now, but it's still doing exactly what it should be. Okay, so your size is still correct. But basically this boundary right here is the working area of that border, and it puts it inside of there. And it does not include that title block information over here at the side. So, if I take this right here, and let me just move this down, and let me copy, go to the drawing tools and go to copy, and let me just do this right here. Okay, so we got some stuff that's outside of the boundary. If I go to my sheet model, this information right here and this text and that line work should not show up because it's outside of the limits. So if I go back to my models here and I go to sheet number 1, you see that it gets cut off because it doesn't reside inside of there. Does that make sense, Steve?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's pretty much it on the name boundary tool for those other types of sheets. Like I said, there is a few limitations with that. It doesn't allow you to output those into separate sheets like what the plan option does. But, in reality here, if you really wanted to, and I'm not sure exactly how we're going to set up our workflows or whatever, but, you could just have one sheet, for all your typical sections like what we have here, and place all of your, name boundaries for all your typical sections inside of one DGN file, and then have it output into separate, drawing models and sheet models, and have everything contained inside of one file for like your, let's say, your typical sections, and then maybe have another one for quantity sheets and stuff like that. Okay, versus having separate DGN files for every single one of those. And that's just a workflow thing that us here at CADD Support, we're going to have to look at to see what's going to work best for the workflow portion of it. But that is an option that can be done. So with that, I think that's pretty much all I need to discuss on the name boundary tool for those other types of sheets.
Well, thanks, Chad.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Speak now.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I think once you get your hands on it and start using it, then you'll come up with a lot more questions than that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's nothing. Demo's tough. Yeah.
Yep, it's nothing hard. It's just a different workflow. It'll take a little bit to get accustomed to using it, but I think once you've used it a couple times and look at the videos that me and Bill have created, it'll be second nature. It's pretty dynamic with that.
Okay, let me go back to sharing my screen again. That was Chad. Thank you, Chad. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Again, I think next month we got Shannon coming up. I don't know what he's got to do, but he'll come up with something good. He always does. And then let's see. We've got some new people in our group. We've got Ethan Hart, who's going to be doing the drainage with Chad. Is that right? Chad, Ethan's doing all that, and then
Yeah, I'm letting them do everything. The
I
whole
would,
thing.
yeah, first class, I would let them do it,
That's
or
right.
give them the Schwantner treatment, right?
I'm going to.
There you go. For those of you that don't know what that is he gives you the manual and tells you to teach half of it on your first day. So it's tough, but we all learn from it.
That's a lie.
What do you mean that's a lie? Anybody else out there experience the same thing? Kevin?
Yes, I have experienced that in my path too as well. So,
And I don't have Jennifer Weaver's phone number yet, her work number, so I don't have that in there. I'll try to get that for the ArcGIS part of it. Is that right, Kevin? That's where she's at?
that is correct. Yeah.
Okay. Other than that, if you guys don't have any other,
Hey,
go
I
ahead.
think there were some chat questions in there.
Yeah, I was gonna see that Jeff submit a couple of them. One
Okay.
of them was, how does the submittal process handle several models in one file? That's something that we're still gonna have to test out. I think in the version that we're running now with the crate renditions, it can actually do the sheet models or multiple sheet models inside of the file. I think it's has the ability to do that. And Chris, you can chime in if you want, but that's just something we'll have to test out before we roll it out.
Yeah, it can do it. It's just a matter of if there's other ones in there that aren't wanted, that's where you run into issues.
Correct. Does that answer? Okay. I think that answered his question. So
He said, okay, thanks, Chad.
Yep. That's right. Awesome.
Any other questions? Anyone got anything? Be excited for next month when Shannon will enlighten us with something. Shannon, you got any idea what you're going to share?
I can't make it.
All right. Well, that's all I've got for this meeting. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next month. I'm going to stop sharing, stop recording.
That Smith saying she has to rest a lot now to get ready for Wednesday.